Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Learning Session, Employer Branding Trends to Know for 2025. My name is Bernadette Van Giesen, and I'm so excited to have you join us as we kick off the new year with a fresh perspective on what's shaping the world of employer branding. For those of you who may not be familiar with us, Stories Inc. is your global content partner for uncovering and sharing authentic stories that attract, engage, and retain top talent. Today, we're here to discuss 4 trends that we believe will define employer branding in 2025. These insights come directly from the projects we're kicking off in the new year and the priorities we're hearing from employer brand, communications, and people leaders across the industry. Please, please, please join us in the comments. We'd love to hear what is top of mind for you and if these trends resonate with you and what you're working on to kick off this year. I'm thrilled to introduce our panel of experts who will be diving into these trends with us. We have Anna Lippy, Director of Customer Success, Doyle Maurer, our Creative Director, Jill Schabelman, partner at Stories Inc., and Lauren Sargent, co-founder and partner. Hey, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
So I know we did this last year, and I thought it was really fun. I was hoping we could kick off with people sharing what their New Year's resolution is for the year. Feel free to go personal or professional, but would just kind of love to hear where people's minds are at starting off 25. I go first. One of my resolutions for the year is to find a regular volunteering gig. So I'm hoping just to get out of my house and get more engaged in the community. If anyone out there is in the area, specifically the eastern side in Maryland, and you have any ideas for great places to volunteer, please let me know. Let's go with Doyle. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I should volunteer more too. I think mine for this year is, this year looks different than every other year in the past for us because we're expecting our first baby. So I just want to be a very present and engaged dad in general.
I love that. That's such an awesome goal. As someone who had their first baby last year, I think that's an amazing goal to have, and I fully believe you. Anna, you want to go next?
Sure. My goal for this year is to read a book a month, which should be doable. And most years I'm really good at the beginning of the year, and then by middle to late year, I just stop. Jill probably reads 10 times more than that, but I do think I can read 12 books this year. So I'll hold myself to it.
What are you kicking off the year with?
I have about 4 books that I read the first page of and then put down. So I haven't decided, but I'm open to recommendations. So far it's not going great, but it's only the beginning of the year.
I think I ended last year at 86 books, so I can send some recommendations.
Oh my goodness.
Awesome.
That's a huge achievement. Wow.
So I can do 12.
Jill, you want to go next? What's your
Sure.
resolution for the year?
Yeah, my goal for this year is to actually meditate. I go in and out and I'm not consistent. So this year I'm going to be consistent 5 or 10 minutes a day. So far, so good. But yep, that's my goal for the year.
I love it. That's awesome. And Lauren.
Well, I know what my resolution is not, because we did this last year and I publicly declared that I was going to do a pull-up, which is an achievable goal, but I did not do it. So I'm not going to double down on that. I still hope that it can be a side goal, but it's not going to be my main focus because I just don't want to double down on that. But I do want to keep pursuing it. I'd say my resolution may be just to, similar to Jill, find more ways to find peace, spot beauty, be more present. So I guess it's Doyle and Jill, and I want to read more. I guess I'll just and volunteer. I'll take everybody's, except the kind of peaceful meditation. That might be a goal this year. We did as a team, we did a sound bath, which I thought was going to be totally corny and weird, and it was really fun. So I'm hoping, more sound baths or sound bath-like experiences. We can just quiet your mind and be present this year. So that would be a resolution, I think.
I'll second that. Sound bath was awesome. I love it. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for sharing your resolutions with us. And please, I would love to hear people in the audience. If you have any that you want to share, would love to read about it in the comments. All right. So with that fun stuff aside, we're going to jump into our employer branding trends for the year. I'm going to kind of take everyone off screen and we're going to come in one by one and dive into it. So thanks panel. See you in a few.
See ya.
All right, so to kick things off, our first 2025 trend is social first video. And this is something that's not completely new to the employer brand game, but something that we really think is going to ramp up in the new year. And I'm really excited to have our creative director, Doyle Maurer, here to talk about this trend. Hey, Doyle, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being here. So social media has become such a key tool for connecting with talent. Can you share more about social first video, what it is and how it's shaping the way employer brands are engaging with candidates?
Yes, I love this topic. Social first video is really about meeting people where they already are. So, candidates are already spending time on platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And those platforms are all about quick, engaging content. So, the days of taking a long form culture video and just kind of reposting it back onto your social media channel are a little bit behind us now. So instead, we're seeing a shift in creating short form content specific to each platform. These are really like bite-sized videos, employee spotlights, quick culture highlights, or even like a 10-second clip that shows off your workplace. And the main goal here is really to just grab attention and get a clear message across to an audience that might otherwise be kind of scrolling passively through their feed.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's an important distinction that there's still always going to be a place for that long form content. But really what's exciting is seeing creators creating specifically for social as opposed to just kind of like putting something up there.
Yeah.
And one stat that I found really, really interesting is that 80% of LinkedIn videos and 85% of Facebook videos are watched without sound, which is just a huge shift in how people consume content. And I assume how we kind of have to react as content creators too.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that? Like, how do you create a video that delivers value, captures interest, stops that scroll, even if it's on mute?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point and something that more people can be thinking about. You really got to assume that people are kind of watching without the sound on. So adding captions and graphics or just something really visual at the beginning. It could be a bold headline or an animated text or even emojis is really important. So thinking about people not hearing someone speaking and then like what can grab their attention. And really the most important part of your video is in the intro. There's a kind of famous quote that I really like by David Ogilvy that says something like, on average, about 5 times as many people read the headline as the body copy. And then he goes on to say, after you've written your headline, you've already spent 80 cents out of your advertising dollar or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's a huge deal. And I kind of think that the first 3 seconds of a video act the same way as a headline. So, if you don't stop that scroll and keep those people watching, then really all the effort that you put into the rest of the video was kind of a waste and doesn't really matter as much.
Yeah, it's true. And I think sometimes the storytellers in us, it's so appealing to like build towards that big moment, which of course you still want to. You want to have those dramatic moments throughout your content too, but just the importance of those first 3 seconds can't be overstated.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that like the first 3 seconds might need to be your dramatic moment. So kind of restructuring how we think about that. But with all of that in mind, there are a lot of ways to get people's attention in your intro. A few interesting ones are like asking a really good question. You can share a relatable moment or even show just a really surprising or kind of like shocking B-roll shot that would interest your audience. And I guess the last thing is really to think about how your video is going to look on the platform where you're posting it. So a lot of platforms are preferring vertical video or even like a 4x5 kind of like stretched out square. So that'd be my advice is think about the dimensions of your videos on the platforms they live on.
Yeah, it's definitely a shift. As someone who makes some of these videos for our channel myself, that it is a shift when you use your tools to switch it to the vertical video. That's a great tip. Okay, I love all those practical tips. Kind of shifting more strategically a little bit, I feel like these social first videos have that flexibility aspect to them as opposed to longer static content that might be more designed for career site or YouTube or something like that. So can you talk about just this agility and flexibility and why this is an advantage for employer brand teams?
Yes. So traditionally, making videos is a lot of time and effort. And I think that's really changed in the last couple years. it's still a heavy load, but there's ways to make it quicker. And social video is just, it's like the perfect timing of wanting to make things quicker and more efficiently. So speed is one of the biggest things you can do. When companies are really thinking about having an always on content strategy, social media fits in perfect because you can produce a lot of that content consistently. And consistency is one of the most important parts when you're doing that. One other piece of that is that's if you're only focused on creating social media content. But if you start with the long form content that you are already creating and then repurpose it into social content, that's also a great way to do it. For example, we created a video for Stellantis, which is an auto manufacturing company, and we were filming a full day, multiple days of interviews and creating long form content. But from that content, there came a really heartwarming story about someone that worked on designing their cars. And it was a story about growing up with her dad and how he kind of like inspired the work that she did. And we were able to cut that into just its own 1 minute short social media story, which was really quick to produce compared to, several long form videos. And it was actually really helpful because they shared it on Father's Day on social media, which was like just great timing for that.
Yeah, and we'll show the video in a second. But number one, I love this video, but also it's different than what the full length, longer form video is about. But it's just a great example of kind of seizing an opportunity and a great story, and then being able to repurpose it on social for a timely moment like Father's Day that maybe a brand like Stellantis normally wouldn't have an angle on. But this story, it features their employee. It's a really heartwarming story, and it makes them relevant on that day where people are looking for content about fathers.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add to that real quick is a lot of times we're tempted to plan all of our content and then film specifically to that plan. But this was a great example of, an unexpected story that ended up being great content. So, actively listening for social content as you're recording is another tool.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Okay, we are going to show this video.
Awesome.
My father was one of my biggest inspirations. His attention to detail and his process of doing something was very slow, but very methodical. He taught me to take pride in what I do and pick a career that I would be passionate about, and I have. I think about my dad all the time. Before he passed, he kept saying he wanted to get a Jeep, and he never did. So every time I'm working on a Jeep product, my dad's right there with me. He's probably watching right now and just going, that's my girl.
Great video. I love that video.
Yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Well, that's one really great example of social first content. Doyle, this has been so great. As we wrap things up, do you have any kind of final thoughts on social first video?
Yeah, I mean, first thing, it was awesome to see that video again. I like the short, like to the point, and I think your audience also likes that. I think one thing I'd say is video production can be kind of overwhelming if you're not used to it. So for anyone that's getting into making videos or making social videos for the first time, I would say to start small and just experiment with it. It's tempting to feel like you need to overhaul your entire content strategy and do this big video project. But if you just start creating short caption videos for an upcoming campaign, or even repurposing an old employee spotlight into a vertical video, starting with those kinds of things can like get the ball rolling a little bit. The other thing I'd say is that specifically on social media, things change really fast. So it's important to keep an eye on the trends within each platform and kind of know what's happening. But I'd say don't try to chase every new trend that comes along, because you'll just always be like trying to do new things and exhausting. Yeah, it's hard to keep up. And then, what works for one company might not work for another. So constantly changing and trying to keep up with that is tough. At the same time, it is important to keep an eye on trends so that as you're kind of like doing something, letting that run for a little bit, seeing how it performs, you can keep experimenting and measuring and like slowly trying new trends that come out instead of trying to.
So like adopting vertical video, like that's something that's very in right now. Very like it's something that's that a lot of brands are transitioning to. So even just like giving that a go is an example of adopting a new trend.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also social media. So attention spans are short, shelf lives are short. So don't be afraid to just have some fun with it and try things is the main thing that I would say. And it's a great year to get started if you haven't already. You can stay active on the platform, keep your content fresh, and kind of stay top of mind with people that are thinking about your brand.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's a great way to close this trend off with. Awesome. Well, thanks, Doyle, as always, for sharing your insights on video. So grateful to have you here.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, for our next trend, we're diving into a new approach we've seen in employer brand, which is incorporating customers into your storytelling. Joining us is Jill Schabelman, partner at Stories Inc., to share more on this approach. Hey, Jill. Welcome.
Hey, Bernadette. Thanks.
So can you tell us a little bit more about this trend of incorporating customers and why it's such an exciting and smart move?
Sure. I don't know if you've noticed, but I feel like over the last few years, there's been a number of Super Bowl commercials that start to feature employees. And to me, that's no surprise, really. People want to know the people behind a brand. And so I think it's natural that we start to flip this in the employer brand space and actually start to feature customers that help make that connection about a team's work and contributions to a product or service and what that actually looks like. So it's like bringing the story full circle.
Mm-hmm. No, and shocker to no one, have noticed that. And it's the commercials that actually get me the most excited to be able to see things from our space, employer brand, recruitment marketing on the big screen, so to speak. So it totally makes sense to see that trend kind of applied in the flip side.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think incorporating customers into your employer brand content can really create a seamless alignment between your consumer brand and your employer brand. And for a long time, these two areas operated pretty independently and were a bit disconnected. But when you start to integrate customer stories into your employer brand, you're really starting to deliver a cohesive narrative where candidates and employees can really start to see the impact of their work. So imagine a time where your marketing team has customer testimonials that point to the impact of a product or a service on a consumer's personal or professional life. And then imagine your employer brand team has content that incorporates these customer stories alongside the contributions that that particular team made to bring that product or service to life. Doing it in this way can really strengthen your brand overall and create consistency across all of your audiences.
I love that. And I can picture it. And so when I think about this, I think a lot about healthcare. And I think that's an industry and a sector that has been doing this for a really long time, and incorporating patient stories and patient outcomes as a part of their employer brand storytelling. But I love the idea of this kind of going beyond that sector. And I could see how this approach could be really impactful for industries that maybe are lesser known or harder to understand. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, healthcare, obviously, this is very easy, but every company does something for a customer or a consumer. And so I think there's lots of ways to share these stories. And, I think one of the biggest challenges that a lot of companies can face is that candidates don't really fully understand what they do or how the work that they would do would connect to the bigger picture. And so customer stories can really bridge that gap. So let's say you're in a misunderstood industry or you have a product that's a little complex. Incorporating customer perspectives helps to clarify your impact, and it shows candidates not only like what they would do, but why it matters. For example, we've worked with companies over the last couple of years in things like legal, tech, or financial services. And these areas are sometimes abstract to people, and they don't really understand like what's going on there. What does my work mean? How does it contribute? But I think by showcasing customers in the stories that use their product or services and show how it helps solve a real world problem, like pursuing justice or achieving financial security, it just makes the work much more tangible and inspiring. And it lets candidates see themselves as like part of this mission, part of this purpose, and it makes the company, I think, much more attractive.
Mm-hmm. It helps deliver a message, and it's just like really great marketing too.
Yeah.
So any advice for teams who are ready to do this and they're interested in incorporating those customer stories into their employer brand? Where should you start?
Sure. I think you obviously have to start with alignment. So working with your customer success teams or your marketing teams to start to identify customers who have some compelling stories to share. I mean, they probably already either are doing this and sharing these stories, or they know of these customers. And you really want to look for the stories that naturally connect to the work that your employees are doing and find, that overlap. So for example, if you're highlighting a customer success, you'd want to include stories from employees who played a key role in that journey. That could be like a developer of the product, a customer service rep, or even a sales team member who helped to build that relationship. And I think the most compelling content is going to include both of these perspectives in the same video or the same story. So, we already produce tons of content where people are talking about the impact of their work from a story they heard about a customer or a patient who benefited from something they did. But I think, again, the most compelling content is going to have that customer and the employees in the same story talking about the same, same service or same product or same thing that has impacted their lives. And I mean, I think about this and I'm like, man, this could be hard work, right? Like this sounds like a lot of work to try to partner with these teams, find the right people, find the right customers. But I would just say you don't have to do a ton of these at once, right? Pilot 1 or 2 and see how they go before you try to find a ton of customers who are willing to participate. I think even just having one in your arsenal will really help candidates understand the bigger picture of what your company does. So.
I think that's great advice. And even potentially some of this content might already exist. And I think you always want to get, permissions and consent to use videos, but some organizations probably have some of these client testimonial videos that potentially you don't have to start from the beginning either.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's lots of ways to probably use existing things you have. And, to that end, I think you can experiment with different formats. So obviously video is like a really great use case for customer stories and, stories about the work. But things like testimonials or social posts, there's lots of different ways to bring these stories to life. You just really want to make sure that it's authentic and it connects back to the values to the value that your employees bring to the table. So just make sure that you're showing the work in a way that really is inspiring and connects to that bigger purpose.
Awesome. Thanks, Jill. And we're going to link in the comments. We have one example. It was one of our stories of the year. If you followed that campaign of a company that did this really well and had both of those perspectives, as Jill said, kind of like the customer and the employee that helped make it happen. So we'll link to that in the comments.
Cool. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. For our next trend, we are joined by Stories Inc. partner and co-founder, Lauren Sargent. Welcome, Lauren. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I love doing this with you.
Always love having you on our LinkedIn section. Okay, so Lauren, our next trend is that we are seeing organizations take a more nimble approach to EVP creation. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yes. EVP activation through employee stories is one of my very favorite topics. And usually we enter the scene after the EVP has already been developed. And that's usually after months and months of thoughtful research and development. And that activation approach works. But I'd say over the last few years, but especially last year, we've worked with clients who want to develop their EVP while uncovering and filming employee stories as they're developing their EVP, and then launching content quickly internally and externally. So this shortcuts a longer process, and it also allows some marketing activity and market testing to occur with employee story content, so employee story videos, while the EVP is being developed. And in many cases, then that EVP is adjusted based on that feedback. So I absolutely don't want to undercut the value of a well-researched and thoughtful approach to an EVP. That is still valid. It's just that some companies also see value in a content-first approach, which allows for a faster launch and some testing along the way. And it gives them assets quickly.
Absolutely. And both are still well-researched and thoughtful. It just, instead of having the two be separate, the two are kind of happening in unison. So just kind of a different approach.
Yes.
Awesome.
Instead of doing employee stories at the end, it's like beginning, throughout, testing, and then yes. So it's just different order.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I love this perspective. For teams who are in the thick of developing their EVP right now, how might this thinking help them?
Yes.
Do you have any examples of kind of what this could look like?
Yes. And I love example questions because that always, like employee stories makes it real.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple examples. One that I'm thinking of is that we worked with a team that felt really stuck with developing their EVP. They had done a lot of the right things in pursuit of their EVP development, tons of focus groups, tons of external research, tons of internal, lots and lots of work. And they did most of that without agency support. But they just couldn't get it to the finish line. And they were getting tired. And so they really just needed another set of eyes plus a push to get it finished. And we found that developing a few employee stories, specifically videos, helped crystallize the path that they were already on, especially with their leadership. And we worked, I guess, thinking of another example would be that we worked with another company that had similarly worked on their EVP over the course of the year. And they had just gone through so many different iterations that some of the team members were even confused as to what the final version was. And so all that's to say that sometimes there's an energy that's lost to get it to the finish line. And that's where interviewing employees and developing employee story content can help make it real and help those who can't see it and say, yes, that's it. And as always, no matter how you develop an EVP, employee stories just activate it, they prove it, they ground it, they make it real for everybody. So I'm always a fan of using employee stories to activate an EVP. It's just how that has been, the order in which that has been done over the recent years has changed a little bit.
Yeah, and I do agree that this feels like a more like agile approach.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, great advice, Lauren. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise on this trend.
Anytime at all. All right. See you later.
So for our next trend, we are talking about a key focus area for 2025, which is strategic hiring content. Joining us is Anna Lippi, Director of Customer Success at Stories Inc., who works closely with teams to create this kind of content every day. Welcome, Anna. Thanks for being here.
Hi again.
So to kind of kick off this trend here, what is strategic hiring content and why is it so important right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. So strategic hiring content is really critical because in this employer's market, it helps companies focus on finding the right candidates. So by giving candidates realistic insights into specific jobs, teams, or locations, it really allows them to self-select in or out before applying. This, of course, improves applicant quality and often reduces the total number of applicants, which saves time for hiring teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, this is an employer's market, generally speaking, right now. And I know we've heard from a lot of teams that they're managing really high application volumes. So I think this is a really smart approach for just like authentically showing what the role looks like and helping, like you said, people opt in and out. So I think that makes a lot of sense. What are some examples of what this type of content looks like that is really effective?
Yeah, good question. So we talk a lot about realistic job previews, and I think for good reason. And I actually love these content pieces. So featuring employees sharing what a day in their life looks like and the challenges they face can be really powerful. They're great for job descriptions, repurposing on social, just really all around good pieces of content. And hiring manager spotlights are another powerful tool that I think we could probably see more of. Candidates want to know who they'll be working with, and these videos provide clarity about expectations and team dynamics. These can be as simple as the manager answering one question like, what does success look like in this role? That's something that candidates would absolutely want to hear. And a third I'd say is office spotlights. So using B-roll footage of spaces and employees doing the actual work. These give candidates a feel for the physical work environment, which is great for building trust and interest. And all around, these just have a lot of beautiful visual interest in this type of footage.
I love all that. One thing that I really liked that you said in the realistic job previews is also talking about the challenges that the people face in their role. And I think that's such an important piece of showing not just what makes the role really great, but also what some of the challenges are, just to give a well-rounded look. So I love that tip. Okay, so any advice for employer brand teams who are looking to get started doing this type of content?
Yeah, sure. My advice would actually be to start by engaging your recruiters and hiring managers directly. So if there's a job category or location that really needs a boost right now, that can be a great place to start. And while you're having these conversations, make your pitch to the hiring manager to create a spotlight video. And then finally, think about scalability. So once you've created a great piece of hiring content, look for ways to replicate that approach for other roles or locations. A consistent framework will save time and resources, and of course, keeping that message cohesive.
Yeah, I love that last tip. Like going back to the hiring manager video, when you said earlier a question like, "What does success look like?" That's one question that you could just replicate with every hiring manager that you interview, and it's going to be different for every role, which is the whole point. And it kind of makes it easy to replicate, and then it kind of creates a series, which just, I don't know, creates more engagement for your employer brand content.
Totally.
Awesome. Okay, so do you, before we wrap up, do you have any kind of like major takeaways or anything you want to leave our audience with about strategic hiring content?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big takeaway is that strategic hiring content doesn't just help you attract talent, it helps you attract the right talent. And so by giving candidates a clear, authentic view of what it's like to work in a specific role, team, or location, you're helping them make an informed decision, and which is really the goal after all.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks, Anna. I think we are good to wrap up from here. But thank you so much for sharing your insights about strategic hiring content. If anyone out there has any questions, feel free to reach out to her on LinkedIn.
Please do. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Anna. All right. Well, that wraps up the 4 employer branding trends that we predict for 2025. We made it. So I want to bring our full panel of experts back out here just to say, wrap things up. All right. Thanks, everybody. We made it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yay. Thank
Thank
you.
Yes, thanks everyone for being here. If anyone out there has any comments or questions about these trends or any questions about working with Stories Inc., we would love to see how we can help. Please reach out to anyone on this panel here or visit our website. Everyone, we hope you have a wonderful 2025, and we can't wait to follow all the amazing work that you are going to do. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.